Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm going to be putting the information in case you are kicked out of the session and need to be readmitted. The code word today is candy cane. I'm putting that in the chat. Also, if you can please update your name that you have on Zoom so that it matches your email. So first and last name. So if you're on a phone or if you're using someone else's um, login, please update it to your information so that if you do get kicked out and need to email Gabby to be let back in, she can more easily um, recognize who you are. Once again, that code word for today's training is candy cane. If you lose connection and need to be readmitted, make sure that you email Gabby at gabriellah@utahcounty.gov. For those that are still just getting admitted, my name is Heather Allen. I'm the Associate Director of the Utah County Children's Justice Center, covering for Kelly today. We're so grateful to have our presenter, Melissa Corkum, and she is a blocked care specialist, author, and speaker. She's also the CEO and founder of Rise to Regulation. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Heather, and shout out to Kelly as she recovers and has her time off. I'm grateful that she reached out to me and for this opportunity. Kudos to all of you in the middle of Christmas crazy for showing up live. What a great service that the Children's Justice Center provides you all to get these trainings. So, really impressed. And thanks for all of you who are sharing how you're connected to child welfare in the chat. That's really, really helpful. Um, I do have some slides. I've got some stuff. We've got almost 2 hours together, and I don't know about you, but I don't really want to be talked at for 2 hours ever. So we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. I do have a lot of information, but also we'll be using the chat, and you know, you can raise your hand if you want to unmute and contribute to the conversation as we go. Obviously, we won't be able to hear from everyone, but we'll do some select things as we go along. So I'm going to just start. So the title of today's presentation is The Cost of Caring. Maybe you came here specifically for that title. Maybe you just come every time there's a training. I don't know. But we're going to talk specifically about something called blocked compassion and with that also blocked care. So I'm going to just start with some basic definitions so we're all on the same page. Um, Let me know in the chat what your relationship is with blocked care and blocked compassion. I like to use this little dating analogy. Are you on a blind date? Are you dating? Or are you in a committed relationship? So, blind date, like you've never really heard of it, you're not really sure what it is. Um, Dating, like maybe you've heard of it, maybe you know something about it. uh, Committed relationship means that you've done some work. Maybe you actively are supporting families in overcoming um, blocked care, and maybe you know that you're in blocked compassion. Love it. Lots of blind dates, dating. Great. So hopefully this will be really, um, really helpful. Yeah, some of you are saying like blind date, but you feel like you've always known each other. So I get that a lot too. All right. Let's see. All right. Can you all see that definition? There's also handouts, I think, were they sent out? They weren't sent out before. They get sent out after. Is that correct, Gabby?
Yes, I
Yes,
will send them later.
Okay, perfect. So all of this information will be on the handouts are just like a copy of the slides. So feel free to screenshot or whatever, but you'll also get a copy. So um, a little backstory. I am an adoptee and an adoptive mom. Four of my six kids came to our family through adoption, international adoption. We adopted toddlers, we adopted kids out of birth order, older kids. They're all adults now. And, but about, gosh, like 7 or 8 years ago, I was starting a podcast with Lisa Qualls, who co-authored The Connected Parent with Dr. Purvis, for those of you who might be familiar with TBRI or her work out of Texas Christian University. And we were hearing from a lot of families this idea of like not really liking their kids, wanting to kind of just like surviving until they were 18, kind of like losing this passion for parenting. There was a lot of shame around that. We started doing breakouts and going to conferences and kind of talking about this just because we had the shared experience of it and we knew that it was something people were kind of afraid to talk about. We kind of wanted to bring it out into the open. And around that time, I was also reading Brain-Based Parenting by Balin and Hughes and came across this term blocked care and had this like light bulb moment like, oh my gosh, this is what families are struggling with. And as many of you know, like name it to tame it, right? Like once you know something has a name, it opens up this whole new world of possibility. One, it tells you you're not alone. But two, it also means that there's, probably some solutions. So, blocked care is a self protective mechanism in the nervous system activated by excessive stress. This suppresses the higher brain functions needed for caregiving, causing your nervous system to develop a defensive stance toward your child. So, primary blocked care specifically is between a caregiver, a parent, like a primary caregiver, and a child. Um, and as we talked about that, we were getting lots of questions from families around, okay, I get that, but could I have blocked care towards my spouse? Could I have blocked care at work? Could my kids have blocked care towards each other? So we, about a year and a half ago, collaborated with Dr. Jonathan Balin, one of the co-authors of uh, Brain-Based Parenting. He was the one who was the first to name blocked care. We asked him these questions and we got a little think tank together and we said, well, really, what is blocked care and what are these other types of relationships and how do they interact? And so we came up with primary blocked care is between a parent and a caregiver. And we felt that was really important to separate out because of kind of this almost stuck relationship parents are in with children, right? If we were in a relationship that felt really hard in almost any other area in our life, if our boundaries were being violated, if it were aggressive or, even abusive, like we would just leave. And that's not an option really for parents in blocked care. Um, but we also wanted to recognize something called secondary blocked care. And this is when there's an adult with a role that doesn't have that full, uh, life-staining responsibility for a child. So those would be like teachers, daycare providers, residential treatment workers. They could also enter into this feeling of blocked care towards a child where they're kind of burnt out, not knowing what to do, kind of at the end of their rope. And then we tackled kind of these questions of like peer relationships, um, coworkers, spouses, siblings, and named blocked compassion. So again, similar mechanism in the nervous system, but with this nuance of a peer-to-peer relationship. So it's not necessarily a caregiving relationship. So blocked care would be a pervasive state of self-protection or defense mode between two peers in which compassion and caring behavior are suppressed or difficult to access. So, in child welfare, caring is happening in a lot of different relationships in a lot of different directions. So we're going to talk about your role in caregiving to like clients, children on your caseload, um, et cetera, and your relationship kind of with your job. Like, the burnout that you might feel being in that role. But we'll also talk briefly about, especially for those of you who are caseworkers or therapists, clinical track, that how you can also notice that there's a cost of caregiving to the people that you're serving. So if you're serving parents who are foster parents, parents of adoption, kinship providers, caring for children with special needs, that they are all at high risk of blocked care. And so um, the presentation today will kind of have two objectives. One, for you to kind of know how to recognize blocked compassion in yourself and how to overcome that so that you can stay in the job that you got into, the passion, probably with some amount of passion, right? We all get into these helping roles because we want to make a difference, and then a lot of times get burned out because of the system or lack of resources, et cetera. Uh, and then, but also, uh, the second part would be how to recognize blocked care in clients and know how to best support them in those roles too. So it's a lot of information to cover, and it'll just kind of be able to dip our toes in, but hopefully it'll give you a good starting point. And if you're curious about more, I'll tell you at the end how you can reach out and kind of where I'm doing the work I'm doing. All right. So again, when our nervous system is stressed out, there are caregiving systems that start to shut down because your nervous system is in service of your survival, right? Its job is to keep you alive. And so if it feels like it's being overly taxed or overly stressed, it may falsely assume that the stress that you are under is actually going to kill you, and it's going to start shifting around how it resources um, yourself so that you can make sure you have enough energy to stay alive. So these are the five caregiving systems that Balin and Hughes named in brain-based parenting. There is an approach system, and this motivates you to want to engage with a family or a client. It's our natural instinct to move toward people. There's also a reward system. This provides dopamine when an interaction goes well. So a lot of times I'll use like the example of whenever I'm in close proximity to like a cute younger kid, like toddler, older infant, right? There's this kind of natural draw to engage with them. Like that's the approach. And then, you kind of like, you might play a little peekaboo, you might give them a smile. And what you're really looking for, right, is for them to notice you, make eye contact, and give like a little smile back, or if you're really really lucky, you get a giggle, right? And there's that dopamine rush, like you got rewarded, and so it makes you want to keep going back for an interaction like that. There's also the reading system. This attunes to clients or a child's inner life using the powers of empathy and mind sight, right? So this is that potential like sixth sense when you um, are in the presence of someone and you're like, oh gosh, they're really struggling. You can kind of tell they're grumpy, or um, they have kind of like, a flat affect. You can tell they're not quite open to interacting with you. Um, or you might be able to tell that they are open. They're coming in, they're engaged, they're ready to connect. And then, whatever you're sensing about their level of connectedness or protectedness, you have a meaning making system. And this creates the narrative about that other person's experience, right? So, when our nervous systems are in connection mode, we're able to have kind of a compassionate narrative about whatever that experience is, right? So, if you have a parent who sits down for a parent therapy session and you can tell they're kind of closed off, they're a little grumpy. Um, if your meaning making system is online and you don't have blocked compassion, right? You're also regulated and connected. Your narrative might be, you know, gosh, they must be having a really hard day today. I know the holidays are really extra tricky when you're parenting kids with really high needs. Um, but if you have blocked compassion and you're feeling kind of closed off and self-protective in your own nervous system, that might mean that your narrative starts to shift. Gosh, why does this parent come in here week after week? And it's like they never want, it's like they don't want to change. Nothing's changed. They're not really doing anything I'm asking them to do. Um, you know, why are they even here? We have our narrative starts to shift. And then the last system is the executive system. This is usually the last one to go offline. Um, it's all of our executive functioning. Uh, so a lot of times that means in your job, if you're in blocked compassion, you might not be feeling the benefits of the rewards of doing what you're doing. You may be less attuned. Your narrative might run more negative, but you're still going through the motions. You're still scheduling the meetings, you're answering the emails, you're showing up every day. In parents, this looks like they're still packing the lunches, they're still driving the kids, right? But they're doing it with um, kind of a little bit more robotically and with less compassion and intention and empathy. Um, any questions so far? Let's do a little check in. I'm going to check in on the chat, and I'd just like to hear from you all, just based on that kind of description. And we're gonna keep diving in. How many of you think you are in blocked compassion in your job, feeling a little burned out? Just put blocked in the chat. And then second question, how many of you have, now that you've seen the definition, you think you are serving parents who are in blocked care? You're recognizing that, oh gosh, I have parents in blocked care on my caseload. Maybe just put parents in the chat. Yeah. For those of you who have experienced parents with blocked care, and even if you didn't know that that's what they were experiencing, maybe just like two or three of you, if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourselves and just, would you mind sharing kind of what that experience has been like, um, serving parents who are really blocked?
Are you asking for people to share out loud?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I can't seem to turn on my video. I tried. Um, but I find when I'm serving, I've never heard this term, but it makes a lot of sense. When I'm serving parents who have block compassion, I feel stuck. So I feel a
Mm,
lot of sympathy for them. I even feel empathy. And these parents tend to be people with um, a lot of trauma in their own background. So they come with a nervous system that's already really overloaded or shut down. And it's hard for them to connect with people, but particularly with their kids. And they often have kids with high needs. And I I find myself more stuck than with other clients because I know that their children need more from them. And I feel sad for my clients. And when I try many different ways to support them in their own health and their own mental health so that they have more capacity to connect with their kids. And they can logically say out loud that they want to be more patient or they wish they could care more, love them more, be less angry, etc. But they can't seem to get there. Um, I feel stuck. That's my I feel frustrated and I feel sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I Thanks for sharing that, Kenwin. So uh, I'm gonna hold my thought for a minute. Does anyone else want to share?
I'll share. I'm the post adoption supervisor, and I would say the majority of our clients that are contacting us have blocked care, and this is something that we're trying to address with them. But they're very overwhelmed and burned out, and it's really hard to get them to take some steps in addressing it. Oftentimes, what we're seeing is they're just very desperate to have the child out of the home. But when they are out of the home, we're not seeing a lot of healing during that time frame either because they're so entrenched in it and it's really hard for them to kind of pull themselves out of it. And they're just very overwhelmed and stressed. And so that's kind of what we're seeing is they're just really desperate to kind of have the child leave the home. And we're seeing a lot of, kind of behaviors where they want the child, they kind of want more punitive things towards the kids. We just see that lack of compassion where they're just so burnt out. So,
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, so I think there's this really interesting connection in all of the kind of trifecta of people here, right? So we have the child, and they often come into this system, obviously by no fault of their own. They have their own trauma. They have something that Balin and Hughes named as blocked trust, which fits in kind of this terminology that they've created, but really we've named it as kids with complex trauma. We've named it as kids with attachment challenges, right? But it's this idea of they have had experiences with people who were supposed to be safe adults who didn't come through for them. And so their nervous system, again, in service of its survival, creates kind of this wall, right? I'm protecting myself from being hurt again. They come into the system. There's people who are wanting to help them, wanting to connect with them, but they're already kind of closed off, right? So then you have parents who are trying to connect. They're putting in their bids of connection. They're, they've there's a lot of expectations on the line. Maybe they've come to this work through or come to caring in foster care and adoption, maybe through infertility, maybe by some faith-based calling, some other drive to make a difference, to be helpful. And so they are vulnerably, right, putting themselves out there. And a lot of times what they're getting in return is some form of rejection. So it could be actual rejection, right? The kid is like, don't touch me, don't talk to me. It could be in the form of big behaviors that seem, you know, just uncontrollable, right? Like there's no solution, there's no punishment, there's no anything that seems to help this dysregulation. And so now the parent, it's kind of like when you reach out and touch a hot stove over and over again. Eventually, your nervous system's going to be like, don't do that. That doesn't feel good. So then, right, the parents' caregiving systems start to shut down that like approach system, the desire to continue to go in and greet them every morning with a smile. Now you're like, well, why would I do that? They always, they just yell at me. It never goes well. But then what happened? And then they maybe come to you all, or you're, doing post placement work, or they come to you looking for help for their child, for themselves, and they're blocked towards the kid. So maybe they're coming to you for maybe even some parent coaching advice, and you're saying, why don't we try this? And they're already blocked towards their child, the child's blocked towards them. So now you're trying to influence a system where everyone's already blocked. And then, like Kenwin said, then you start feeling stuck. And so you're trying to do your best to help. You feel like you're not making progress. So now your nervous system's going, well, this doesn't really feel fun. I don't really feel like I'm making a difference. So now you're starting to feel some of that blocked compassion, right? That frustration. So everyone's coming to it really by no fault of their own. They're coming with best intentions, but our nervous systems are protecting us and then creating kind of these negative feedback loops. All right, so I want to, before we move on, I want to talk about the 10 signs of blocked care that are listed in, I have a book called Every Parent's Guide to Reclaiming Compassion, and we list these 10 signs for parents that they might be in blocked care. And so we've already, just in our short conversation so far, touched on a couple of these. The first one is they are too caught up in coping with their child's behavior to be curious about the meaning behind it. And so I heard maybe it was Beverly talking about like parents come like wanting a solution for the behavior. They just want their kids out of the house. They don't have any capacity left to be curious. I think the flip, like the parallel to this for you all as people who are in child welfare is as when you start to be in blocked compassion, you also start to lose your curiosity about what's happening for the folks on your caseload. Number 2, they feel defensive and guard themselves from rejection. 3, they feel burned out, chronically overwhelmed and fatigued, right? And so that's that like thought of like, I just need this to go away. I just need them out of my house, right? Because there's just nothing left in the gas tank. They feel resentment toward one or more of their children or their situation as a whole. They feel irritable with other family and friends. So, right, this starts to leak out into other relationships, not just the relationship with the child, because the nervous system is on lockdown for the whole, like for everything. You know, it's just like when you numb out pain, you numb out other emotions like joy. They isolate themselves, so that creates kind of this further feedback loop because we know that shame kind of grows in isolation. They think I'm a terrible parent. No one else, like, what parent would, adopt a child and then not like them, right? They don't want to talk about it to anyone because they feel like the only solution is they have to be a terrible human being. And so they don't want to talk about it. So then they think they're the only ones. 7, they've become cynical about helpful ideas, right? So for those of you who are serving parents in blocked care, this is what you're up against, right? When you're giving ideas and they're like, that's not going to work. We've already tried that. Or, they tell you how it's going to go before they've ever tried it. And they might even be right, right? But they're very closed off. They're coming to you for help, and at the same time, it's like every suggestion gets pushed back. They feel they've lost compassion, which leads to shame. We talked a little bit about that. They experience a crisis of faith or a challenge of a personal belief system. And then lastly, they don't feel real pleasure in parenting. So this is posed as a quick like self-assessment at the beginning of the book. I am working on having an online version of this available for folks to be able to use with clients, and for parents to self-evaluate. At the end, it'll kind of give them a score and then recommend kind of like some next steps. So if you would be interested in that resource, my goal is to have it, it's kind of my like Christmas break project, if you will, have it out by the end of this year. Go ahead and just drop your email in the chat. I'll save those off, and when it's available, I'll be able to send it out to you guys. Which of these signs, actually, I'm gonna share my screen again. Let me do this a different way. Um, Also put in the chat which of these signs you recognize either in yourself if you're a parent and identify as being in block care, or the parents that you're serving. Which of which of these kind of jump out and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I see that all the time. Yeah, cynical about resources. Yeah, a little bit of everything. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so we're gonna keep talking a little bit about the neuroscience of kind of how this happens, but also kind of start transitioning to, okay, so what do we do about this? All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about neuroception and confirmation bias. How many of you are familiar with polyvagal theory? You can pop that in the chat as well. Oh, sticking with the dating analogy, I love it. Yeah, that's great. A little bit, great. Okay, so polyvagal theory was authored by Dr. Stephen Porges and talks a lot about the physiological impacts of a stress response. And one of the tenets of polyvagal theory is something called neuroception. This is our nervous system's kind of litmus test to decide if we should be in connection mode or protection mode. So your nervous system is taking in millions of bits of data every minute and making a judgment call. Should I be in connection mode or protection mode? But as you can imagine, that's a lot of data to process. So neuroception also relies on a confirmation bias to help speed up the efficiency of processing data. So each of our nervous systems has a confirmation bias of either the world is safe or the world is dangerous. And that confirmation bias is a little tricky to overcome or to switch. So the way that that looks, I tell the story often, is so again, we have 6 kids, two without trauma and with pretty healthy attachment, and then four with trauma and a different confirmation bias. So summer of 2021, two things happened with two different kids, and it was like such a stark illustration of this idea of confirmation bias. So the first was our son was 16. He had asked me to pick him up at a friend's house at about like 10 o'clock, I think, just a little past my bedtime, if we're being honest. I got caught up with one of the other kids. I didn't set an alarm. I didn't put it on my calendar because he had just asked that afternoon. I just figured I would hold on to it. I got distracted. I completely forgot about this kid and that he needed me to pick him up. So a this is not a proud parenting moment, right? It's not the end of the world, but it's not great. And so he called. Well, first of all, he had trouble getting a hold of me because, I was trying to do that thing where you like put your phone down at the end of the night and you're not on it all the time. I was trying to be a really good like technology person. And so my phone was like on do not disturb. So it took him, he called multiple times. I didn't pick up my phone. He finally had to call like his little sister, right, who's always on her phone. And so she hands me the phone and he's like, "Hey, mom." Just wondering, at this point it's like 10:30. Are you on your way to get me? And then I'm like, oh crap, right? Like, and then it's like, oh shoot. No, sorry, I kind of forgot. I was supposed to pick you up, right? Like, no kid really wants to hear that. I'm, gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm on my way. I'm dropping everything coming now. But he was, again, he is healthy attachment. His confirmation bias is the world's safe. So he was like, it's not a big deal. Like, no worries. Like, do you just want me to spend the night? Like, you can come get me tomorrow. It's no big deal. There's still kids here, whatever. Like, was not phased at all. Like, I literally told this kid, like, I totally forgot about you. Um, he didn't even think like I had died on the side of the road. He just like wasn't phased, right? Same summer, different kid. One of our, she was a young adult living out of state and was scheduled to come in for a visit. She doesn't get back often. There were a lot of expectations riding on this visit back. She's supposed to come in on a Tuesday. That weekend, we were all closely exposed to COVID. Like eating with our fingers, like communal meal eating with someone who had COVID all weekend long. She gets Sunday night, she comes down with symptoms, tests. So Monday we call our daughter and we're like, look, at this point, I think there was a vaccine, but she wasn't vaccinated. And the recommendation was still if you knew you were exposed, it was still like the 10-day quarantine situation. Hey, we've all been exposed to COVID. We're all on quarantine. I don't know if this is a great time for you to come visit, right? Uh, she says, I knew you didn't want me to come visit. I'm, I actually have been thinking I don't really need a family anymore. You know, I don't want to reschedule. I'm out, all the things, right? Like she took it so personally because her confirmation bias is that the world is not safe. She's on her own. And disappointment to her feels like the end of the world. And she really didn't talk to us for months after that. Like, and I mean, you all know, like, there was nothing we could do about that. Um, so, confirmation bias really impacts the narrative that we're telling ourselves. And when we're in blocked compassion or blocked care, often our confirmation bias is to protection, right? And so then that's coloring all the interactions we have with, as a parent with our children, or as a provider our with our clients. And it can be tricky because that confirmation bias, even when there's evidence to show otherwise, the confirmation bias still kind of always wins out. So imagine that you think the sky is blue. Maybe you don't have to imagine, maybe you believe the sky is blue. What would happen if, so that's your confirmation bias, that the sky is blue. What would happen if you came out one day and the sky was green? What would you think? You can go ahead and pop in the chat. Yeah, pollution, ice check, tornado weather, right? Some kind of like, yeah, some kind of pollution. But do you believe that the sky's still blue behind the green? Probably, right? Like something happened, whatever is alien attack, whatever created that, right? It didn't really change the reality. It's just like an anomaly, right? So every day though, you get up and it's still green. It's still green. How many days do you have to get up and see it green before you're like, the sky actually changed color, right? It's going to be a while. And imagine if on day 33, you get up and you see a sliver of blue up behind the green. then you're like, "Ah, gosh, I knew it was blue." And then it goes back to being green for another 54 days. And you're still like that little sliver of blue was enough to keep your confirmation bias firmly in place, right? And so the same is like with our nervous systems. If we think about so often, I think as an adoptive parent of kids with trauma, I thought, you've been home for 5 years, right? Like we've been showing you a different way of being cared for, a different way of us showing up. Why are you still acting like the whole world's against you? But we're also not perfect, right? And so we do things that disappoint our kids. And that's like that sliver of blue. Like, see, I knew people couldn't be trusted. I could provide, 30 days of perfect trust-based caregiving and one day have a bad day, and that's all it takes to keep the confirmation bias firmly in place. Um, and similarly, I think with us in our jobs, right? If our confirmation bias is, the system's crappy, or, there's never enough resources to do my job, right? That colors the narrative and how we come into the work. All right. Okay, here's another just fun, because I think confirmation bias is such a huge part of understanding this work. I have another really quick little demonstration. Let me see. What did my too many? Okay, here we go. Okay. What pop in the chat, what's the first word that comes to mind when you see this image? Water, peaceful, serene, beautiful. Great, sleep. Believe it or not, this is a pretty neutral pretty neutral image. Um, y'all are showing your confirmation bias. But let's see what happens if we change the music that goes with this. This is actually a video. All right, now what word comes to your mind? Sharks, jaws, danger. Yeah, right. So confirmation bias is like the music playing in your head for the data, right? So none of the data is really neutral because we all have a soundtrack. But it turns out that most of you probably had more of this soundtrack going on, right? That peaceful soundtrack. But not everyone has that, right? Someone said, I'm surprised it wasn't the Jaws theme, right? So just again, as an illustration, sometimes we'll talk about confirmation biases, like what is the music playing in your nervous system, right? Are you watching the world go by with shark music playing in the background? Or are you watching the world go by with spa music playing in the background? Okay, so neuroception, again, the confirmation bias is kind of playing in the background, but the nervous system is taking in information from three different pathways. There's an internal pathway, so that's taking in information from your body and your mindset. There's data from the external world, and there's data from your relational world. So all of that data is coming in, and your nervous system is categorizing the data as safe or not safe. And then if there's more cues of safety coming in, then that helps you stay in open and connection mode. If the cues of danger outweigh the cues of safety, then you go into protection mode. So this is fluctuating, right? The goal is not to necessarily always be in open and connected mode, right? Sometimes there are times when our nervous system needs to activate, it needs to put us in protection for a reason. But the question, resilience, right, is our ability to recover from that when the threat is actually over, and not live like we're still in threat even when there isn't a threat. And when we're in blocked care or blocked compassion, basically the cues of danger are outweighing the cues of safety. And so the short answer to how do I overcome blocked compassion or burnout, or how do I help a parent overcome blocked care, is the cues of safety need to outweigh the cues of danger. And so that means that we can learn how to intentionally increase cues of safety and potentially even decrease cues of danger, right? To tip that scale, so that the nervous system can start to come out of that chronic protection mode. And it plays on something in polyvagal theory called bidirectionality, that the vagus nerve, which runs from our brainstem to wanders almost all over our body, has nerve fibers that carry information from our head to our body and vice versa. And interestingly, the 80% of those nerve bundles actually carry information from the body to the head. So I'm a huge, huge proponent of body-based interventions for increasing felt safety. So, sometimes when people are kind of just on the brink of blocked care or just on the brink of burnout, there are some of these things that we're going to talk about that can help tip those scales. But a lot of times, right, just trying harder to be more compassionate is, right, that's kind of starting at our head and asking our body to respond differently, versus actually changing the cues that our body is sensing internally, externally, and relationally. And when those scales tip, then our mindset automatically will shift. So we're going to spend the rest of our time together talking about what are these intentional ways that we can cue safety to our nervous systems, and how can we also provide really good resources to the families that we're serving. Before we jump into that, I'm going to just pause and see if there are any questions so far on what we've talked about. The caregiving systems, kind of what blocked care, blocked compassion is, how it shows up. Any questions so far? Just go ahead and drop them in the chat. All right. Sounds good. Moving on. All right, let's start with the internal bucket. So, none of these are rocket science, right? But when we think about margin and we think about the cues in our nervous system, we need all the help we can get to have positive cues of safety as opposed to cues of danger, right? So it's thinking when we think about the cues that our body's giving to our neuroception, we have to think about things like, are we hungry? Like, are we getting enough protein? Are we thirsty? Are we dehydrated? Especially in the winter. And Utah is not a super humid state, right? It's easy to, when you're like out in the desert, it's easy to get dehydrated. Um, and just a little bit of dehydration is sending cues of danger to your nervous system. Like your nervous system's like, oh gosh, are we going to die? Like we're not getting enough water. Water is really important, right? And so we might not feel like that's like such a big deal, but when you're already holding so many other stressors in your life, like that's just another one. Like that could be the one that breaks the camel's back, right? Are you tired? How many of you are actually getting like the recommended like 7 to 8 hours of sleep? Go ahead, just for funsies. Put in the chat how many hours of sleep on average you're getting right now. Six, eight, five, seven, 7 to 9. Yeah. Yeah, and we all like you need to know your body, right? Like how much sleep does your body need? I'm kind of like a 7 to 8 hour girl, right? But if you have uh a chronic illness, like you might need 12. If there's lots of things going on. And also like what's the quality of the sleep? I see people like with broken up sleep. Yeah, like I'm up from like 2 to 3 every night, because that's the stage I'm in, all the things. Okay, and then sick. Like, how many of us actually stop and take time to get better when we're sick? How often are we pushing through? It's just a cold. I can still get up. Like, maybe I'll work from home. Like, you might make some accommodations, but we rarely like increase the amount of sleep we're getting to like 10 hours, right? Um, or it might not even be sick. It might be like injury, right? Like we're walking around with a bum knee, or I was actually just telling the story last night. In 2009, right before we adopted our youngest son, it was our first adoption. I was I clenched my teeth at night, and I had done it for so long, and it had gotten underdressed for so long that the muscles had gotten so tight it actually dislocated a bone in my jaw, and I got lockjaw. Like I could only open my mouth 11 millimeters, so that's just under 1 centimeter. And I don't know about like, so it's like the finger, like your finger width. um and the only reason I went and got it checked out was because I was starting to worry that I was going to starve, because I had to cut my food up into such tiny pieces, and I was like shoving these tiny little bites in. I had two preschoolers at home at the time, and I just didn't feel like I had time to go get it checked out until like, and it started like, my jaw would kind of get tight and it would be painful, but I could still kind of eat. And like over time, the amount that I could open my jaw just decreased more and more and more and more over time. And by the time I finally got it checked out, it required like 3 months of physical therapy twice a week to fix it. Like if I had just taken a short amount of time and done something preventative like a good mouth guard at the beginning, I could have saved, I lost hours and hours of my life to fixing it because I had let it go for so long, right? Um, and what I, hadn't calculated then, because I didn't know about the nervous system and all the things, is just pain, the pain of the TMJ, like that's not, those aren't cues of safety to our nervous system, right? And so what can we do to address some of that? Also movement. I mean, I don't think any of us are surprised that movement's important, but I think it's I think we underestimate how important movement is. So, a couple things that I think are really interesting, and maybe will motivate you to want to get up and move more. In Bruce Perry's work, he talks about how rhythm and repetition in relationship is regulating, right? And so not only is movement often a cue of safety to our nervous system, it's like cupfuls of water into that bucket. It's organizing to our brain. It helps us release anxiety. I mean, there's so many things about movements that are rhythmic. Um, Another fun fact is Kelly McGonigal wrote a book called The Joy of Movement. I don't know if anyone's read it, but she talks about something called hope molecules. And this is a specific hormone uh, secreted into the bloodstream that gives us feelings of hope that only is pushed into the bloodstream um, during the type of muscle contraction that happens during kind of strenuous physical exercise when we're, you know, jumping or dancing, running, um, maybe lifting weights, right? That 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 type of exercise contracts our muscles in such a way that it pushes hope molecules into our bloodstream. So those are huge ways to signal safety to our body. Um, and then, you know, mindset things. What's the story we're telling ourselves about our situation? We're going to talk about something called points of joy. That's one of my favorites to start off with when doing this work with people because it's such an easy entry point. It has such a high return on investment. But just noticing and recognizing that we do have a confirmation bias and that is impacting that narrative. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But um, in the way of demonstrating how movement can impact our mindset, we're going to do a quick demonstration. So if you are in a place where you can push back from your desk and stand up, we're about at the halfway point. This is a long time to sit and listen to someone talk to you. So let's get up and do a little stretch. If you're driving or can't get up, that's fine. We can also do this from sitting down. But if you are in a place where you can push back and stand up, go ahead and do that. And you want to be able to just spread out and kind of make this star pose like you see on the slide there. So I'm going to push back a little bit. Also, I'm going to try to do this with you, and hopefully you can, I don't know if I can step back far enough for you to see, but we're going to get really big and spread out. And then what I want you to do on the count of 3 is you're going to bend your knees and your hands at the same time and make that kind of like sumo pose that is in the second, like that. So kind of quickly, but we're also going to make like a sound. We're going to take up space with our voice as well. So we're going to start really big, and then I'm going to count to 3, and then you're going to go, huh, like make like a warrior sound with your voice.
Melissa, can you
Um,
stand up a little behind, a little more back so I can see you?
I can't. I can only back up so far,
Oh,
but
okay. No, that's
if
fine.
can you see? Yeah, but if you can look at the slide, can y'all see the slide with the cute yoga girl? Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, we're gonna do what she's doing. We're gonna start on the left, and then we're gonna end with a like that sumo pose. So we're gonna do it like 3 times. I'll count us off each time. Okay, so ready? Everyone, hands up. Feet nice and big, taking up lots and lots of space. 1, 2, 3. Ha! 1, 2, 3. Huh. Make big, big sounds. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Great. All right. Shake it out a little bit. Take a nice deep breath. Great. All right. How do you feel after doing that? Just quick 1-word answers in the chat. Fabulous. That was fun. Energized. Gonna kick down some doors, grounded, great, invigorated. Yeah, right. So that's the power, right, of this bidirectionality. Imagine if I had just said to you, guys, we're halfway through. Um, let's just let's just be let's just be more alert the second half. Let's just do better. Let's all wake up a little bit more. Um, if I had just told you to do that, right? What it might may or may not. If my voice was excited enough, maybe it would help motivate you or wake you up a little bit more. Um, but how much more powerful, right, to have our bodies change shape and do something. How many of you have watched Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on power posing? Has anyone seen that? Yeah, so if you haven't, that's a really fun one. Um, she talks about the impact of posture, right? And how I think it was something like when people would power pose, and power poses were kind of like what we just did. They were getting your body really big or standing like a superhero, imagining yourself standing like a cape. If you stood or stood in a pose that represented power for even like 60 seconds before a job interview, I think I forget what the percentage is, but people were hired at a way higher percentage because they would come in, it would tell their body that they were confident, and they would come in and it would change all the cues, the mirror neurons that their nervous system was getting off, and people that they were around could sense it, right? um, so how we move our body helps, and how could we use that when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling discouraged in the families that we're getting to work for? What if you did that simple exercise? You just made your body really big and pumped yourself up before each client. Like, what would that do for our nervous systems? Yeah, the TED Talk is by Amy Cuddy. I'll put it in the chat, on power posing. Super, super interesting. Totally worth the watch. Okay. So that is a way, right, that we can help our nervous system take a different cue from our physical body. Let's talk about how we can help our mindset. I stopped sharing the slides. I'm going to pop them back up in just a sec. Okay, so points of joy. Again, this is something that if you take nothing away from today, I would encourage you to put this into practice. And if you are someone who works with parents on the regular, this is one of the first things I would have them do if you feel like they might be struggling with blocked care. So the first thing that you do is you brainstorm a bunch of things that bring you joy. So let's take a minute and do that together. Pop in the chat just anything that brings you joy. And like, I'm not thinking big things, I'm thinking small things. White Christmas, like right now, white Christmas lights on a Christmas tree, a hot cup of tea, snickerdoodle Christmas cookies. Those are some of mine. All right, let's see what we have here. Puppies, nature, hiking, music, singing, pets, outside, sunshine. Love it. Potatoes. Really, potatoes. There's so many forms of potatoes that can make everything all better. Hallmark movies, hot tubs, love it, love it. We encourage, when we do this with families, we encourage them to try to get up to 50 it's a little bit of a struggle sometimes. We tell them to just keep a running list, um, and kind of how quickly they can come up with this list often will tell us something about how deeply they're in blocked care, right? Some people are like, I, they're just so stuck. Like I had a client once who literally struggled to get to three things. She was so stuck. And then, I have other folks who just love the challenge of making a good list, and they'll come up with 50 of their own and then volunteer to come up with 50 for someone else. But then basically, and we, I even sometimes I don't even tell people to try to get to a certain number. I just tell them to keep a running list because sometimes people get caught up. They're like, I don't have 50 yet. And then they don't go on and do the next part. The next part is that you want to intentionally try to do 7 points of joy every single day. Intentionally. Um, you can create like a little dashboard. You can create a little checklist on your kitchen whiteboard. You can, um, you know, make a note on your phone, whatever you need to do. I often will tell people to put their points of joy on post-it notes, and put them around where uh, like it makes sense, right? So if like one of yours was a warm cup of tea, like write warm cup of tea on a post-it and put it like on your kitchen cabinet. If music's one of them, like put a note with music on your dashboard. And that's just to help like cue you, like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be trying to do 7 things that bring me joy. Two things usually happen when we do this. One, folks are like, oh gosh, I actually have a lot of joy in my life. I just haven't been noticing it, right? Like I do drink coffee out of my favorite mug every morning, but I'm usually running around, doing 13 million other things that I forget that that's like something I get to do every day. Or, I go on a walk every day, or I do well, right now the weather's not very nice here in Maryland, but in the spring and summer, like I'm out with the kids at a playground, but I'm not really noticing like, gosh, the weather is so beautiful today, or the sun feels so great on my face. Right? Their confirmation bias is telling them that their life is really hard and they don't have any joy. But then when they do this exercise, they're like, oh yeah, look at that. Like I do this, I do this, I do this. Or they'll find out that they really have struggled to do things for themselves. And this gives them permission to take a couple seconds or to add some things that are going to cue safety to their nervous system. And again, they're not big and hard things. Like you're already going to be washing dishes every night, so maybe you just put on your favorite playlist while you're doing it, right? Um, Maybe you give yourself permission to take 5 minutes to just be still with your coffee rather than, running around all morning. Um, and they might be big things. Like you might be able to get out for a massage or do something a little bit bigger, but really we want this to feel really approachable. Like, no, I don't have to make any huge changes. Um, I can kind of do these things integrated to what I'm already doing. Um, when I asked my email list earlier this year, um, of all the different practices that we have in the book on how to overcome blocked care, which one was making the biggest difference, every single person who responded to me responded points of joy. So, one parent said, taking the time to notice the points of joy that I have gotten in a day really helps to keep me from spiraling into frustration and helplessness about how challenging our family's life may be in a particular season. Then seeking to add additional points of joy reminds me that I still have power over our chaotic life. Another parent said, intentionally practicing my points of joy daily helps me focus on myself and not the challenges around me. Right? So there's a sense of lost autonomy when we're living in situations where our kids have really big behaviors, or for those of you working in child welfare, like there are so many things in the system that you do not have control over that are incredibly frustrating, right? And so that can play into this narrative of, my life is so hard, my job is so terrible. And those things might be true, right? But there's a balance there of, you do have some autonomy, and points of joy is a really great way to help your nervous system find safety in knowing that you do have control in some areas. And so then the narrative becomes, yeah, life is really hard with my kiddo, but we're still able to find joy in the midst of the hard. Or look how much joy we can still have even when things are hard. It helps hold that nuance, right, of the both and. Yeah, it's definitely a mindfulness practice for sure. All right. So that was the internal bucket. Some just couple quick practices on what we can do from to fill up that bucket. Now let's talk about that external. This is really about your environment. These questions are all based off of like our five senses, right? What can we declutter in our visual field? Music playing, right? I mean, even if we go think about the shark music demo, like actually the music of our, like the soundtrack in our actual life matters, right? Like how much joy would it add to have, kind of like upbeat Christmas music if you celebrate Christmas playing right now, like getting you into the holiday spirit. Um, I'm like back in this like 80s, 90s like country phase right now, and it's really making me happy. It's kind of like taking me back to a time in my life where it was a little less complicated. Kind of makes me want to dance, which is really good for my nervous system. So, nothing like a little Shania Twain to bring a little joy to my life. Um, Clothing, gosh, like I think COVID taught this to me. Like I am a nicer person, a nicer mom, a more patient partner, in leggings and comfy clothes, right? Like even just the little bit of like I'm a sensory girl, like even just a little bit of sensory of having like jeans on, like is just a little bit of a rub to my nervous system, and it erodes my patience over time. Uh, Eating something yummy is another great point of joy. And then also noticing like smells. Uh, we have our olfactory center is connected directly to our emotional center. It's the only one of our five senses that actually bypasses the cognitive part of the brain before it hits our emotional center. So, diffusing a citrus oil or a floral oil or just any scent that makes you happy has can have a drastic effect on your overall mood, which again is going to impact whether your brain is playing shark music or spa music in the background, right? Um, okay, so take in that visual picture, pop in the chat. How do you feel when you look at that? Yeah, stressed and chaotic, overwhelmed, uneasy, anxious, overstimulated. Yeah. None of this does not feel like it cues safety to our nervous system, right? Um, but then what happens when you look at that? Danny, I appreciate that. You would want pizza. Blissed, relaxed. Yeah, someone said sterile. We all have our own version of what our nervous system needs. Yeah, so just think about that. Like even these little things, where are your eyes resting during the day? Um, my desk used to face my bed, and I am not normally like a make your bed kind of girl. I hadn't been for 40 years, and then my desk faced my bed, and I looked at it all day long, and all of a sudden I had to make it every morning before I sat down for work, right? Because it was just that little bit, like it was so stressful to look across the top of my laptop and see like wrinkles and unmade, like, and as soon as I would like make it and it was like flat and smooth, like it had a like a very distinctive different feel in my nervous system. All right. Relational bucket. So when we are around other people, when our nervous system can sense another nervous system, it is exchanging subconsciously thousands and or millions of bits of data back and forth that you aren't even aware of. And this is happening even through video modalities. There's a certain amount of this that is happening. But it's kind of all those like subconscious things are kind of how you can use that right attunement system, and it's how you sense that maybe someone's feeling uneasy or they're having a bad day, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. It's how we know that someone's like plastering a smile on and it's just kind of a facade, right? It's not like the full thing because you're extrinsically taking in some data, but then there's all this subtext happening beneath the surface, and our nervous systems are super attuned to that. And so when you are spending a lot of time maybe working with clients who are super stuck, that's bombarding your nervous system with all of their anxiety, their stuckness, their blockness. Is you're taking a part of that when you're being present with them. And in some ways that's part of the job, right? But then we need to be intentional about how are we balancing the scales out? Like if you see 6 to 8 clients a day or more, and you're getting all of this kind of these relational cues that are tricky and hard, complex, um, what are you doing to then balance that out with spending time or having interactions with safe people? So, who are um, who are some safe people in your life that you have regular interactions with? So you can just name them as like my spouse, my best friend, the neighbor, my walking buddy. Yeah, also animals, also parents, kids, partners, right? And can you feel that like if you live with your safe people when you go home at the end of the day, right? You can kind of almost feel the scales like rebalancing. Um, Oftentimes when we think about this aspect for parents that we're serving, there's that isolation piece that we talk about in blocked care, right? So they are relating all day long with kids who are not giving them cues of safety to their nervous system, and then they might be so isolated that they're not getting that counterbalance of relational safety in other places. And even if there's a good co-parent relationship or partnership, a lot of times both parents are so exhausted and so blocked that that's it's not quite enough, right? I had a client a couple years ago, and she just was really struggling with her identity of being a mom. She actually was a, a licensed family and marriage therapist, so she did therapy all day long with complex cases, and then she had 2 kids with complex needs, And they were constantly verbalizing to her that um, that she wasn't a good mom, right? It was always like, why can't you do this, or my friend's mom does that, or I mean, all the messages, right? And I remember saying to her, like, what is counterbalancing that, right? Like, you are doing so much to serve your family and your kids, um, and you're letting, like, the only message you're hearing are from your kids. How are you getting time with people who can say to you, I see what you're doing. You're doing a really good job. I can see that you're tirelessly advocating in this place, in this place, in this place, right? To balance out those messages. Um, Obviously, in person time is ideal, but like I said, the nervous system still picks up a lot in video. Uh, I'm a huge fan of Marco Polo. Any other Marco Polo fans out there? It's a video messaging app. I think that's a great way for people to stay in touch. It's a great way to vent, feel heard, have someone else, witness your experience and also offer co-regulation back. Um, and then what does that look like for you all who are um, working maybe in teams or in an office with other folks, or um, how are you, or how can you, maybe you're not doing it, but kind of looking forward, what are ways that you could co-regulate with folks at work, and intentionally help each other fill this relational bucket? So either one, what are ways that you're doing that well so that people can maybe learn from you, or what are ways you're thinking, hey, maybe coming into the new year, here's a way that our staff, our office, our group, the people I work with, the people I interact with in this space, we could do this for each other. Actually, this seems like a good time to open up the floor if someone wants to share, unmute themselves and share. How can we reduce blocked compassion together in the workplace? Yeah, Rachel said they're trying to do 5 languages at work, maybe an anonymous affirmation jar where people write down kind things about others, small gifts on birthdays, etc. I love the affirmation jar.
I know at the Children's Justice Center, we try to do a lot of things as teams to support each other. We have monthly time set aside for teams to get together and just spend some non-work related time. So we call it our morale corral. We're building morale. We're
Oh, I
just
love
trying
that.
to, yeah, let loose, relax a little bit. And we recently started respite days. So one day a quarter at the end of the quarter, we have a day where we're blocked off so that we can take time to make sure all our data is complete and entered. We have a day to focus on that, but also to take some time with each other or self-care, just some time away from all the work duties, so we can recover at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, reading a book together. Kylie, when you read the book, was it like completely unrelated to your work, or was it kind of like a non like still related to what y'all did do?
Um, so it was still related to what we do. It's Walk With Me, and it was just really good though to like hear what part we did like 5 chapters a week, And then it was just good to like hear what stood out to others and kind of what they brought to that, and just was like a setting that we knew we were gonna have weekly to be able to like talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting lunch together, monthly staff meetings. Yeah. Love it. Someone said laughing together, so I want to talk a little bit about that actually. How many of you know what the play personalities are? Stuart Brown's play personalities? Okay, so I am such a huge fan of playfulness, both in the workplace and then also I spend a lot of time with parents helping them discover their own sense of playfulness for themselves so that they can also bring that into their parenting practice. Um, Playfulness fosters that social, emotional, cognitive resource, right? It's like the quickest way to learn something. Um, it helps like you you can't be in the playful part of your brain and in like the anxious part of your brain at the same time, right? It helps us flip out of um, those stuck cognitive loops we can get in. Um, we had a really interesting experience this past week. My ex's father is not doing well, has different forms of dementia, and um, but we're both really fascinated by brain science. And he was really agitated, and uh, so Patrick started talking to him about sports stats because he is a huge fan of sports. And he immediately flipped into a different part of his brain. He wasn't agitated anymore. Something else weird happened. He actually lost his access to his verbal center. So he was like, flipped out of agitation and he started making hand gestures, but he was really engaged in the sports stats. Later, they were watching a basketball game together, and as long as the game was on, he was really lucid and kind of in that playful engagement part of his brain. And then every time a commercial would come on, he would flip back into this like kind of dementia agitation state. Um, so Patrick started muting the commercials and playing his favorite 50s playlist. Like that's the music that, he grew up listening to. And between those two things, the sports game and the music, they were able to keep him lucid and not agitated for like the entire evening. So playfulness and this part where we are enjoying something, being in that part of our brain is so healing. But oftentimes when I talk about playfulness, people kind of have this idea of what it looks like. And a lot of times it's maybe silly or I don't know. I hear a lot of people say, like, it's not really my personality or I don't do playfulness. So I bring you the Playful Personalities by Stuart Brown because I think it helps expand our definition and um, uh, helps us have a better definition of play and figure out because everyone can play, everyone can get to this part of their brain. It just might look a little different based on how you're wired. So the first play personality is the Joker. So this is a little bit more like stereotypical play. This is someone who loves making others laugh. They love humor, silliness. Um, these are folks that would like love an improv class. These are, like our stand-up comedians, even practical jokers. We have a lot of practical jokers in our family. There's the kinesthete. So this is someone who plays by movement. So this is someone who might be an athlete. For me, one of my favorite ways to play is to social dance, partner dance. So blues, swing, salsa, bachata. That's that's where my creativity kind of lives. For others, it might be running, climbing, yoga, playing on a sports team. There's also the explorer. So this is someone who plays by discovering new things. So it could be physically new things, um, like going to a new place, traveling. This is also one of my favorite ways to play. It could be an emotionally new experience or an intellectual new experience, right? So it could be learning something new. It could be trying out new hobbies. There's the competitor. So this is someone who plays the best when there's competition. So this also includes playing on competitive sports teams. It could be someone who loves board games or other social competitive games. Um, this is someone who, like, if you're doing points of joy with them, you would like compete to see how many points of joy you could get in one day. There's the director. This is the one who just finds great joy in planning the fun, right? So they might be the one who throws the party. They kind of like to be behind the scenes. They orchestrate the events. And again, their fun is kind of watching other people have fun. There's the collector. This is someone who enjoys gathering things. It could be physical things, stamps, shoes. I just talked to someone who collects leather handbags. It could be collecting experiences. Um, and maybe even collecting knowledge. There's some overlap with the explorer there. There's the artist creator. So this is someone whose fun would be different, maybe visual arts or writing music, baking, woodworking, drawing, doodling. And then lastly, the storyteller. This is someone who uses their imagination for fun. So these are folks who might enjoy creative writing or role playing, acting. Um, these are the kids that are really good at sitting on the carpet with, some dolls or action figures and creating a whole scenario. And of course, you can have multiple play personalities. Uh, and this can also help us know how to connect with the people that we're around if we have this language. So, after kind of hearing about those 8, which pop in the chat, which play personality or personalities do you think you most connect with? What resonates with you? Yeah, I love it. I see some jokers, some directors, kinesthete, storytellers, a little bit of everything. Yeah, so then we can think about, right, like how can we bring this in um, to the workplace, right? How can we use this to help us think outside the box? Can we create some friendly competition in a job that feels really serious and hard sometimes? Can we all have a new experience together? I was on a business retreat in the fall, and we all did this like game show experience together. It was super fun. So it was a little bit of competition, a little bit of exploring. Um, yeah, can you have create a creative space in your office or an experience where you all get together and be creative. Could we could you all take an improv class together? Have a game night? A lot of times, uh, just the common experience to get out and do something kind of outside of what you're doing. But there's also a lot of ways to integrate these playfulness ways into the work that you're already doing to make the work feel more tolerable and more playful. Yeah, dark humor and sarcasm. I feel like that should be the ninth playfulness personality. I think he definitely missed an opportunity there. I can relate to that as well.
I was gonna share something if you can
Yeah,
even hear
Carolee, go
me,
ahead.
which is, sorry, I'm outside, so it's kind of windy. So I work in the ER, and so we see tragedy every day, horrible things happening. And a lot of us work with psychotic patients. So sometimes I'm trying to bring this back, but for a while we had like a little tally of times had something thrown at you or sworn at you or told that you only work for money or that you're stealing all of my money or that um, you've been flashed or something, just because we all experience it and you have to kind of laugh about it. Otherwise, it gets heavy. Or being
Yeah,
told that, so many people are like hearing the word trigger or hearing the word toxic. How many of those you hear in a shift or things like that are just to kind of make it lighter because otherwise it's like you laugh or you cry kind of thing.
yeah. I can, thanks for sharing that. I can already imagine, right, a situation where we help a parent, right? Like kind of like a swear jar, but like something like that, where they like, put a quarter into a jar every time, you know, their kid X, Y, or Z, and then they get to take them, when the jar is full, they get to take themselves, on a weekend retreat or out to coffee or something like that. Um, what are ways, let's talk about some more ways that we can um, either bring a sense of playfulness to the job that you're doing or help a parent bring playfulness um, to their experience. Now that you've kind of seen these 8 options laid out, does it spark your creativity or give ideas on how we can be really intentional about bringing playfulness to work, both your own work and then work you do with parents? And feel free to unmute yourself if you have an idea. I'll leave the slide up so you can refresh your memory on the play personalities. Yeah, try to find humor, special playtime concept in PCIT. Tracy, do you find that parents um, struggle with either knowing what to do during playtime or having the bandwidth to do that? I'm asking for a friend. I literally hate imaginative play with kids. I will read you a story. I will take you on an adventure. I'll play a game with you. I do not want to sit on the floor. And like that's what I think of when I think of like playtime. Do you ever get pushback about that?
Yeah, I mean, PCIT is it's very specific. So there are lots of rules for that specific intervention and rule-based play is out. So anything that has rules, anything that's requiring you to say no as a parent or hey, we don't do it that way is out for that because it's only 5 minutes initially and fidelity to the
Yeah.
model. It's 5 minutes of some type of imaginative play, some type of pretend play Legos, something that doesn't have rules, drawing, cartoon, I mean, sorry, yeah, just drawing or doing those kinds of things. So, certainly I think it's tricky because no one feels like they have enough time to do that, right? But I like the idea of even with ourselves, setting aside saying, you know what, for 5 minutes, I'm going to do this thing because it's not something I've been doing and I want to start integrating it. And then we start finding the joy in that, right? And the enjoyment of it and hopefully develop a habit.
Yeah. Um, are any of you familiar with the um, Dan Siegel's Healthy Mind Platter? Have people seen that? That's if you can Google that. That's another great one to like think about. Is your brain getting all the things that it needs? And so it talks about having time to move, time to sleep, time to connect with other people, time to be like unscheduled time, right? Like time where you don't, where your mind can wander, focus time, like then there is time where you want to focus. And um, so I have found that I think it's kind of a lesser known piece of his work, but I think it's really, really helpful. Anyone else, how are you using or how could you use playfulness? Decorating contest. Yeah, love that. Um, I spend a lot of time talking with parents about pushing into behaviors rather than trying to stop them. And so we talk a lot about like if you have a child who is kind of prone to physical aggression, if they start to get um, aggressive with you, kind of what they're expecting for you to do is kind of push back, right? Stop that, don't do that, and then kind of like escalate things. But um, can we kind of take the power out of that by turning it into playful, like, oh, look, you want to, like, let's let's arm wrestle, let's thumb wrestle, let's see if you can push me over. How strong are you? Kind of like inviting some of that. There's also really interesting work. His name's Fred. I don't know. He's the original play guy. I forget what his last name is. Donaldson? No, I don't know. Fred somebody. An original play. So that's another one to look up. Santray, love that. Um, dance parties. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of dance parties. Alexa will play you a dance party too. Yeah, music playing. I love the olives. Yeah, love all of that. Um, yeah, we have parents do something called a foundation of fun, where they have something kind of fun, simple and fun that they can do on set on a timer, like they do it the same multiple times every day or the same time every day, kind of using that as a pattern interrupt. All right. Here are the books I referenced earlier. Um, Reclaim Compassion is adoption specific, but it also has a faith component to it. And then this Every Parent's Guide to Reclaiming Compassion is for general parenting audiences, and it's not faith-based. It's also a larger like workbook format. You don't need both. They're super similar content, just kind of different formats and for different audiences. Um, and then other ways that I am able to support folks. I'm certified in the Safe and Sound Protocol and the Rest and Restore Protocol, both based in polyvagal theory. Uh, Really helpful for getting nervous systems that are stuck in blocked compassion or blocked care get unstuck. And then I do speaking and training both in person and virtually for parents and agencies, therapy practices, schools. So just a huge privilege to be able to talk about this work. When we like when I came into this, a lot of you had never heard of blocked care, and so just continuing to help get the word out is kind of my jam. It's what I get to do. So thanks again for having me. About 10 minutes, 15 minutes left. So I'll open it up for questions and we'll just end our time kind of with reflections and questions. So if you have a question, pop it in the chat or unmute yourself. And then also, 2 hours is a long time. We talked a lot about a lot of things. If you would pop into the chat something helpful or valuable that you're taking away that you want to kind of cement in your brain and not forget as we move on into the rest of our day, that would be great. So questions or something helpful and valuable. Points of joy, I love it. Points of joy, love it, love it, love it. And thanks for everyone who participated in the chat while we were here together. It helps add to the experience. Play styles, confirmation bias. Yeah, 80% of the information is sent from the body to the brain. 80% of the nerve bundles in the vagus nerve run from the body to the brain. Yay, so many points of joy. I love it. Movement. Yeah. Oh, the 7 points of joy. It just it gets you to almost 50 a week. It's a little bit arbitrary. Yeah, Serena, that's great. Using the internal, external, relational buckets to think about, I'm guessing like points of joy to increase your list. That's a great tip. Yeah. What about caregivers for adults? Absolutely. Right. So, caregiving for adults, we we actually talked long and hard about whether or not this needed its own term, but we would probably put that in blocked compassion, even though it is technically a caregiving relationship, but because it's to adults, the the nuances in the terminology are in some ways kind of don't matter because the mechanisms in terms of like how the nervous system is, you know, looking at the balance between cues of safety versus cues of danger and the things that we need to do to help reverse it kind of all are the same, no matter whether it's primary or secondary blocked care or blocked compassion. But yeah, I mean, the same things could apply. Like the stress of caregiving for another adult can easily put you into a block state. And then the way to overcome that would be the things that we talked about, really intentional nervous system care. Oh, thanks for that link on Savoring Joy. And the evaluation form is now in the chat. Peter asks, can you talk further about how parents can change their mindset, approach their child, or think about their child when they have blocked care? Yeah. So I think, Peter, the biggest thing that we've seen is when we're working with parents with blocked care is before anything else can happen is they have to have their experience validated without them feeling like we're judging them, even though I hear some really hard things from parents that feel really harsh, especially for me as an adoptee, right? Like, I feel fortunate that I've been able to sit on both sides of this coin. Like, I have great, like the work I do is because I say, like, my motto is because, every child deserves to be raised in a home free from blocked care, right? But I've also been the parent with blocked care, so I have an incredible amount of compassion for parents. And when we work, I think a lot of parents come to us thinking that we're going to more push them to be, more in connection with their kids, go after that. And they really can't tolerate that. And so what we've learned is we have to start with the parent's nervous system. We have to let them put aside, kind of table the status of their relationship with their child for the time being, and we focus on things like points of joy, their nervous system, what do they like, getting back into their own hobbies, reconnecting with safe people. And the final part of the work that we're able to do then is then kind of bring it back around to some gentle practices with their kids. We have something called lessons in liking, where we challenge them to text a friend or a spouse every day at the same time one thing they like about their kid, right? And so it just starts to help shift the confirmation bias they have about their child. But it doesn't even have them interacting differently with their child yet. So we're just kind of gently trying to help their nervous system come out of protection mode. And then once we've kind of gained that trust and their nervous system is starting to feel a little bit more open, then we can start gently bringing curiosity around to looking at the behaviors differently. So I hope that helps. Serena asked, any resource options on how to help blocked care parents when there are mixed needs households? Yeah. Serena, can you expound on that a little bit more? I think I know what you're asking, but I want to make sure I answer the right question. Are you able to unmute yourself? And
Yeah, sorry about that.
yeah, no problem.
Just kind of a question about I'm trying to think of some of the environmental or external stressors for blocked care parents. And one that I've seen and experienced is the idea of like each child having different needs that a parent is then supposed to just kind of know everything
Mm-hmm.
for. And then if you have a household of people who, one child needs quiet and stillness and another child is noise and movement based, and just kind of trying to navigate that, which is very adjacent to what you're talking about. I want to be very clear that this might not be the scope of this, but
Yeah.
if there are any kind of resources about how to help with those external stressors or cues of danger when siblings in a family or the children in a family have such a diverse kind of portfolio of needs.
Yeah. Okay, so two things. One is almost going to feel a little bit like a cop out, so I get that. But what we tell parents is, um, they are their best advocates, and they're the closest to their situation. They know the things the most. And so doing this nervous system care work helps them stay in a connected place in their nervous system long enough to access their own creative brain, right? So, like, the solutions that solve what you're talking about, like when you have kids with opposing, like seemingly opposing needs, takes an incredible amount of creativity to tackle that and to keep your sanity while doing it, right? And so rather than going directly after those solutions, the first thing I do is try to get a parent back, like, to a space where they can get back to their own creative brain, because they often have the best solutions inside of them because they know their family so well. The other thing is, uh, um, I am people who hang out in my sphere and my clients like are so sick of hearing me say this, but I'm such a fan of body work and how body work can help our nervous systems feel safer. And so having parents do body work, like either the Safe and Sound protocol, or also a really big fan of lens neurofeedback specifically, and having the kids do that to kind of help decrease the intensity of the needs, right? So if there's a lot of sensory um, integration challenges, things like lens and the safe and sound protocol can help the nervous system be more integrated in those things. So it decreases the needs overall, but also resourcing the parent um, to handle that level of chaos better. Does that make sense?
Definitely, thank you. You did have a slide up on something about the safe and sound one, and I didn't like get to see it in time. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping that will be
I'm
available
gonna
later.
put yeah, I'm gonna put my website, riceregulation.com. There's uh information about Safe and Sound and Rest and Restore on my website. I also put in the chat LENS neurofeedback. It stands for something I can't low energy something, LENS neurofeedback. You can look it up. Um, and that specifically, as opposed to other forms of neurofeedback, um, trauma release exercise is also, I'm also a fan of that. And I would suggest for all of you in this work um, that if you're not accessing body work therapies that allow your body to process what you're holding in terms of stress and even trauma from the work that you're doing, that is part of your practice. Um, whether it be brain spotting, EMDR, lens, safe and sound, like your body is holding a lot and in this work. And I think in order for us to stay in it and do it well, and we're all passionate about it, and we all got into it for really noble reasons, then we have to be um, accessing services for ourselves that can keep us out of blocked compassion.
Well, Melissa, this was wonderful. There were so many comments in the chat saying how much they appreciated your presentation and everything that you brought. Thank you so much for doing this for us today. It is so timely, especially with this stressful holiday season. And yes, everyone, like they're saying in the chat, it was so good, so helpful, something so different from what we usually hear when it comes to like compassion fatigue. This concept of being blocked, I think will resonate with a lot of people. Thank you to our attendees. Again, Gabby put the link in the chat for the evaluation. You do have until Friday, 5 p.m. to complete that, but please, if you're not going to do it right now, save that link as you will not be able to access it after we close this presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Melissa. And also the link I'll be closing at 12:15. So please save that link.
Like we're
Yeah,
hopping off.
thanks for having me. And again, thanks everyone for being here during such a busy time of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was excellent.
Well, thank you. And I will also put my email in the chat if folks want to reach out and have questions. Happy to do that. Happy to chat.
You shared a lot of great resources too. I think people were very interested in some of the books and resources that you mentioned.
Yeah, glad to do it. The author of the Play Personalities book was Stuart Brown. I'll pop in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, Juliana, thank you. Sweet.
Looks like we're still getting a few emails coming in. I did try
Yeah.
to copy and save those for you as well.
Oh, thanks. I think I was able to save off a copy of the chat too, so I've been trying to
Oh,
do that periodically.
great. Okay. There's a question about the title of the book, Play Personalities. Is that what it is called?
I think it's just called Play,
Oh,
Barbara. Yeah.
Just a little story while we're wrapping up, but I was just doing a session with a boy with autism on Monday night, and my coworker was talking to his mother in the lobby, and then afterwards she said, "Hey Karen, I really connected with his mother, and I have adopted kids and she's adopted kids, and I want you to send her a link to this book." And it was your book, Reclaiming
Oh.
Compassion. And so that was the first I'd heard of it. And so then so glad I came today to hear even more. But I'm like, that's just kind of weird that it just in, 2 days you've come up twice and had no idea about this stuff. So thank you.
Oh, that's sweet. It was meant to be.
Yeah, that's how I was feeling. I'm like, that's awesome. So yeah, it was a point of joy.
I love that. Yeah, it continues to amaze me where the book pops up or where people um I had someone reach out to me yesterday and she was like, my pediatrician recommended contacting you, like they're an adoptive parent. And I was like, well, who is that? It was someone in Spokane, Washington. I live in
Yeah.
Maryland. I don't know. It's always humbling to see the reaches of where when you write a book where it ends up.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's what I was thinking. So you're here today, and I'm like, and when you said you were in Maryland, I'm like, wow, and here we are in Utah, and I just handed out a referral for your book just on Monday night. So yeah, it's crazy.
Someone asked about Fred Rogers' original play guy. That sure. It sounds like it might be um that sounds right. Let's see, Fred. Let's see, where's
Is that Mr.
Donald?
Rogers?
Maybe
yeah, say
no.
that
Fred
again.
Rogers is no. Hold on. It's Fred Donaldson,
Um,
a researcher, and he's got a lot of YouTube videos, and it's kind of counterintuitive, I think, it to people now to engage in this like very physical form of play. I think people are really afraid of it, but um, yeah, I think it's really interesting work.
you said you're in Maryland and you said it's pretty cold out. What's the weather you guys are having right
What's
now?
cold? I so I think we're like getting a little bit of a warm front. I think it might hit like 50 tomorrow, but earlier this week it was like 28 with a wind chill of like
Oh,
11. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
we're been pretty warm in Utah so far. It's kind of
yeah,
weird.
I was in Austin 2 weekends ago. It was like 70 and sunny and I was like, I
Oh.
don't know if I'm going home. I can work from anywhere.
There
Um,
you go.
yeah. But we do have all four seasons here. So